What happens when the person you once loved turns into your worst enemy? Willow's life has always been overshadowed by her younger sister Skylar, the golden child who captured all of their parents' love and attention. From the outside, their family seemed perfect, but Willow was left to fend for herself in the shadows. Over the years, Skylar's attitude grew more dismissive and entitled, and despite Willow's attempts to be seen, she remained invisible. Then, when Willow thought things couldn't get worse, she was shockingly excluded from Skylar's wedding, her own sister turning her back on her for something as shallow as her job as a waitress. As the pain of betrayal set in, Willow was forced to confront the true depths of her family's favoritism and the emotional scars that still lingered. But the wedding drama was only the beginning. Would Willow finally break free from the toxic grip of her family, or would her sister's obsession tear everything apart? My name is Willow, and I'm 26 years old. Throughout my life, I've always felt like an outsider in my own family, constantly marginalized and overlooked. In sharp contrast, my younger sister, Skylar, just 2 years shy of my age, has always been the center of attention. She was the one who captured all of our parents' love and adoration, showered with praise and indulgence at every turn. Our parents never hesitated to support her, even in the smallest moments. Whether it was a simple problem at school or a minor disagreement with a friend, they were quick to jump in and offer solutions. Meanwhile, my accomplishments and attempts to seek validation were often met with indifference, as if I were invisible. One seemingly ordinary day, as my parents prepared for a family outing to the park, the contrast between how they treated Skylar and me became painfully evident. My mother was busy packing a bag, while my father searched frantically for his car keys. Skylar, full of her usual energy and impatience, was eagerly urging them to hurry up. Feeling a deep longing to be included, I walked up to my mother and said softly, "I want to come along too." I hoped for some kind of affirmation, some recognition of my desire to be part of the family, but her response was cold and dismissive. "Willow, you should stay home and do your homework." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I stood there stunned and heartbroken as she continued without a second glance. My father, of course, said nothing. He merely stood there, silent and passive. And Skylar, oblivious to the sting in my chest, cheerfully waved goodbye and skipped out the door, calling over her shoulder, "See you later." Left alone in the living room, I sat on the sofa, staring vacantly out the window. The silence around me felt suffocating, broken only by the rhythmic ticking of the clock. I was excluded once again, relegated to the corner while they went on with their day. It wasn't the first time, and it wouldn't be the last. My parents were always so focused on Skylar that I was left in the shadows, the constant outsider. As a child, Skylar would often approach me with innocent enthusiasm, asking if we could play together. Whenever I engaged in an activity, she would eagerly join in, calling out, "Me too." It felt natural then, to have her by my side. But as she grew older, she started to notice the special treatment she received from our parents. They praised her for the smallest accomplishments, lavishing her with affection. Meanwhile, I was dismissed, my feelings and achievements consistently ignored. Skylar quickly learned to play into her role as the perfect child in their eyes. Over time, she developed a sense of superiority over me. What started as a natural bond between sisters slowly morphed into an uneven, strained dynamic. She became dismissive of my attempts to engage with her. If I shared something about my day, she would brush it off with a casual laugh or condescending remark. The sister I once knew and loved had begun to treat me as nothing more than an obstacle in her perfect world. After high school, I started working as a waitress at a local restaurant. At first, I was filled with uncertainty and anxiety, unsure of what the future would hold. Slowly, though, I found my rhythm. The work became something I could take pride in, and I found small joys in the routine. Yet, my family's disregard for my job only deepened my sense of isolation. My mother was quick to belittle my occupation, often asking, "Is this really the only job you can do?" She showed no interest in the stories I tried to share about my work life, as though it wasn't even worthy of her attention. Skylar's response wasn't much better, though she would occasionally remark, "Being a waitress is a respectable job." Her words felt hollow and lacked any real warmth. It was clear she didn't truly care about my struggles or my growth. At family gatherings, I often felt invisible, as both my parents and Skylar seemed to ignore my presence, a recurring pain that deeply hurt me. Yet, I continued to yearn for their recognition and love. When I was 20 years old, I met Jasper through a mutual friend. He initially appeared shy and serious, but as we began to talk more, I was drawn to his profound kindness and empathy. We quickly formed a close bond, and after several outings together, our friendship blossomed into a romantic relationship. Spending time with Jasper became the highlight of my days, and we eventually decided to move in together. My life began to revolve around our shared moments, each day feeling special because of his presence. He was not only a source of comfort at home, but also an adventurous companion with whom I shared my outdoor pursuits. As I embarked on this new chapter with Jasper, I found myself distancing from my parents and Skylar. Engrossed in my work and life with Jasper, my interactions with my family decreased significantly. The time I spent with Jasper provided a comforting escape from the unresolved traumas and emotional neglect I had experienced at home. One day, after a long period of absence, I made the decision to attend a family gathering, which stirred up a complex mix of emotions that I had suppressed for years. I engaged in light conversations with relatives I hadn't seen in a while, yet I noticed that my parents and Skylar still treated me as though I were invisible. Unexpectedly, Skylar loudly announced to everyone at the gathering, "I'm getting married!" I was taken aback, as this news was disclosed to me at the same time as it was to the other relatives, with no prior indication from her or my parents. This revelation overwhelmed me with a mixture of emotions, and I felt a distinct chill in the manner in which this news was shared within the family. Speechless, I could only silently accept the atmosphere of the moment, as discussions quickly shifted to focus entirely on Skylar's upcoming wedding, further marginalizing my presence. I experienced an indescribable sense of loneliness and sadness, which gradually deepened. Despite maintaining a smile for the sake of appearances, I felt a profound sense of alienation from my family. As preparations for the wedding began in earnest, my feelings of exclusion only intensified. Since I had moved out of the family home, I was not kept informed about the details of Skylar's wedding plans. In an attempt to be involved, I sent her a message saying, "If there's anything I can help with, just let me know," only to receive a curt and dismissive reply. "It's okay." Her indifference towards me made me feel even more insignificant and deepened my sense of alienation from the family. A few days later, I received an unexpected call from Skylar. "Willow, can I ask you about the wedding dress?" Surprised and willing to assist with anything related to her wedding, I eagerly awaited her instructions. However, her next words left me utterly speechless. "But you're not invited to the ceremony." The stark reality that I wasn't even invited to my own sister's wedding weighed heavily on my heart. Desperate for an explanation, I managed to ask why. I couldn't comprehend why I had been excluded. Skylar paused for a moment, then sighed deeply and responded, "Because I simply do not want my soon-to-be husband, Wesley, and his parents to become aware that your occupation is that of a waitress." As soon as those words pierced the air, an intense pain tore through my heart, feeling as if it were being ripped apart. To exclude me for such a superficial reason, my voice trembled with a mixture of disbelief and hurt, but Skylar responded with a chilling indifference. "That's just the way it is. If you truly cared about my happiness, you would understand, wouldn't you?" I stood there utterly stunned. It was clear that Skylar failed to comprehend the profound depth of pain her words inflicted upon me. She seemed oblivious to how deeply wounded I was, a hurt that extended far beyond what she could possibly imagine. "Have you ever even considered my feelings? Please think about me as well." At this, Skylar's voice grew louder. I was momentarily taken aback and involuntarily swallowed my next words, fully aware of how significantly she prioritized her own status above all else. "Fine. I'll email you the details about the dress," she remarked dismissively before unilaterally ending the call. At that moment, a constricting tightness enveloped my chest. A tumultuous blend of anger and sadness churned within me, leaving me grappling with a whirlwind of emotions. I had never envisioned that not being invited to my sister's wedding could inflict such profound pain. I resolved to compose myself and discuss this matter with our parents. Upon calling them, my father dismissed my concerns with a chuckle, suggesting that must be some kind of joke, while my mother mocked me with disbelief. Skylar would never say such a thing. These words nearly shattered my heart. They didn't believe a single word I said. This interaction only served to reaffirm the extent of my alienation within my own family, and a profound sense of disappointment washed over me. Unable to endure the cold treatment from my family any longer, I returned to the sanctuary of my home, where Jasper was seated on the sofa. He could instantly tell something was amiss and quietly inquired, "What happened?" I chose not to force a smile and instead opened up about everything: the wedding, the disheartening conversation with our parents, and the deep-seated feelings of alienation I had endured. As I concluded my recount, tears were threatening to spill. Jasper listened intently in silence. After a reflective pause, he sighed deeply and began to disclose something unexpected. "Actually, there's something I need to tell you. I've been secretly working as Skylar's wedding planner." His revelation left me wide-eyed, a complex mixture of surprise and suspicion rendering me momentarily speechless. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I managed to stammer out. Jasper's expression shifted slightly, his discomfort evident. "I knew you had distanced yourself from your parents and Skylar," he said quietly, "and considering that, I opted to remain silent. I was aware of how this situation could affect you." His words triggered a mix of emotions in me. On one hand, I appreciated that Jasper had been mindful of my feelings, choosing not to add to the strain. On the other hand, a part of me wished he had been more open with me sooner about just how isolated I had become within my own family. "But Skylar asked about the dress, didn't she?" Jasper continued, moving to sit beside me, gently draping an arm around my shoulders. I nodded, though my thoughts were still a swirl of conflicting emotions. "Yes, but the fact that she asked you about the dress suggests she still relies on you in some way." His words, spoken with such calmness and understanding, eased some of the tension in my chest. I looked up at him, feeling the weight of his perspective sink in. "Maybe Skylar might reconsider. Maybe she'll invite you to the wedding after all. If she truly disliked you, she wouldn't have asked for your help with the dress, right?" Jasper's gentle smile warmed me, his words providing a brief comfort against the growing chill I felt. Still, the doubt lingered in my heart. I wasn't sure if I could ever expect an invitation from Skylar, no matter the reason behind her asking for my help. Jasper stayed close, his presence a steady support as I navigated through the web of emotions that tangled me. The preparations for Skylar's wedding dress continued, each stitch and fold a reminder of the exclusion I felt. Though the pain of not being invited weighed heavily on me, I focused on the one thing I could control: the perfection of the dress. I followed Skylar's instructions meticulously, ensuring every detail was flawless. It was the only way I felt I could contribute, yet in my quiet moments, I held on to a fragile hope that somehow I might still be included. But as the wedding day drew nearer, the invitation never came. The day of the rehearsal dinner arrived. The venue was beautifully decorated, and the air was filled with laughter and excitement as friends and family gathered. But amidst the celebrations, I couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. During a break in the dinner, Wesley, Skylar's fiancé, approached with a furrowed brow. I could see the concern in his eyes as he looked around. We had known each other since college, not close friends, but always on good terms. The familiarity between us seemed to fuel his curiosity about my absence. "Hey, why isn't Willow here at the rehearsal dinner?" he asked, his voice tinged with confusion. "She's family, right?" Skylar paused, clearly caught off guard. She managed a forced smile before answering. "Oh, she's busy with work. It's no big deal." But Wesley wasn't convinced. His frown deepened and he pressed further. "But isn't it strange that your sister isn't participating?" Skylar hesitated, her smile faltering for just a moment. After a beat, she replied, "Well, maybe. But let's focus on enjoying the rehearsal dinner for now. You're here for the wedding, right?" Wesley, though still puzzled, chose to accept Skylar's words at face value and let the conversation go. Later that night, after the dinner had concluded, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. It was from Skylar. "Why did you snitch to Wesley?" Her voice, sharp and accusatory, took me by surprise. I sat up straight, bewildered. "What do you mean, snitch? I haven't said anything to Wesley." Skylar's anger laced her words. "Don't lie to me. You must have told him to ask me to invite you to the wedding, didn't you?" I froze, my chest tightening with confusion and hurt. "No, Skylar, I didn't say anything like that." Her voice was venomous. "Don't lie to me. Why else would Wesley say something like that? You must have manipulated him into asking me to invite you." The accusation hit me like a slap in the face. I could feel the tears welling up as I tried to explain. "I didn't say anything, Skylar," I choked out, my voice faltering. "Please, you have to believe me." Skylar's harsh words echoed in my mind long after the call ended. It felt like a betrayal I couldn't fully process. I had hoped deep down that things could somehow be mended, but the sting of her accusations left me shattered. I wanted to cry out, to demand answers, but the weight of the years of neglect, the exclusion, and the broken trust had taken their toll. I couldn't understand why she would lash out at me like this. I had never tried to sabotage her wedding, never tried to interfere with her life. But in her eyes, I was the enemy. "Stop interfering with my wedding. It's none of your business." Saying that, Skylar hung up the phone. Several hours later, my phone rang again, this time displaying the names of our parents. As I answered, I was immediately met with my mother's icy voice, her words dripping with disappointment. "Willow, what are you thinking? Interfering in your sister's wedding? What could possibly be your motive?" Her accusation shocked me. "I didn't ask for anything. Wesley was merely curious." I tried to explain, but my father's stern and disapproving voice soon followed, adding to the barrage of criticisms. "Do you realize the extent of the trouble you've caused Skylar with your actions?" he demanded, his tone cold and accusatory. At that moment, a surge of intense anger and frustration welled up inside me, compounded by the injustice of being misunderstood and unfairly blamed. "I don't want to say anything anymore. It's clear no one believes me anyway," I concluded, feeling utterly defeated and helpless, and ended the call. Tears threatening to spill over, crushed by the harsh words of my family, I was overwhelmed by a profound sense of frustration. Yet I was not ready to leave the situation unresolved. Driven by a mix of anger and determination, I picked up the phone and called Jasper. "Jasper, please go ahead and cancel the rental of Skylar's wedding dress." And there was a brief pause on the line as Jasper processed my request, but he eventually responded with understanding and support. "Okay, I understand how you feel. I'll support your decision." From what Jasper later told me, Skylar was visibly distraught, unable to grasp the unfolding events. On the day of the wedding dress did not arrive as planned. It is said that the guests were abuzz at the venue. Amid the mishap of the missing wedding dress, the ceremony apparently came to an end. In the aftermath of the ceremony, unable to contain her frustration and anger, she confronted Jasper, demanding, "Why did this happen? What were you doing as the planner? You've ruined my most important day." Following these tumultuous events, Skylar departed on her honeymoon with Wesley. Unexpectedly, during their honeymoon, I received a call from Wesley. His voice carried a tone of confusion and concern. "Willow, I need to ask you something. I tried discussing why you weren't at the wedding with Skylar, but she's been evasive," he continued, his words tinged with confusion and suspicion. "Honestly, I've been puzzled about your absence. I felt compelled to know the reason, so I'm calling you even though we're still on our honeymoon." Anxiety and suspicion were evident in his voice. I carefully chose my words as I responded. "It's because Skylar was concerned about you and your parents knowing I'm a waitress. She was probably worried about how you might perceive that, especially since she wasn't aware that we're friends. After a moment of silence, Wesley replied, somewhat shocked. I can't believe Skylar would think that way. He calmly accepted the truth as it dawned on him during their honeymoon, leading him to make a decisive and dramatic choice. He declared his intention to divorce Skylar. When Skylar returned from the honeymoon, she went to her old house only to discover a for sale sign planted in the front yard. Frantically, she called me. What's going on? Why is the house being sold? I responded calmly, after taking a brief moment. Our parents asked me to let you stay there, but since you got married, I assumed it was no longer necessary and decided to sell it. Skylar was silent for a moment, then her voice, trembling with emotion, revealed, Actually, I'm getting divorced. I was taken aback and momentarily lost for words. Divorce? But weren't you just on your honeymoon? As I spoke, the memory of Wesley's unexpected call during their honeymoon resurfaced in my mind. You're to blame for my divorce. Skylar's accusation shook me deeply. I found myself speechless, feeling the sting of her words deeply. Wesley discovered that you weren't invited to the wedding because I didn't want him to find out you're a waitress. You must have told him everything, didn't you? As Skylar's anger was directed fiercely at me, I stood silently, overwhelmed by the situation. It's all your fault! I managed to reply with a trembling voice. Skylar, I never intended to hurt you. But when Wesley asked, I couldn't lie. I never imagined he would decide to divorce you. Skylar interrupted me, shouting, Don't make excuses! You need to take responsibility! With that, the call ended. A few days later, I saw our parents' names flash on my phone screen and sighed loudly, bracing myself for another unpleasant conversation. As soon as I answered, my mother's cold voice came through, laden with disappointment. It's truly unfortunate what happened to Skylar. You instigated this by telling Wesley, didn't you? What a terrible sister you are, my father chimed in, echoing her sentiments. You always do this. You never think about the family. What were you hoping to achieve by hurting Skylar? The accusation made my blood boil with anger. I retorted sharply, You're never going to believe me anyway. You act as if I'm entirely to blame for Skylar's hurt, but you understand nothing at all. After a brief silence, my mother sighed. You really lack compassion for your family. I couldn't help but respond with a cold, bitter laugh. Me lacking compassion? Are you implying that you have ever shown any compassion towards me? Silence fell on the other end of the line before I continued in a frosty tone. We're not even a family. I don't care what happens to Skylar anymore. With those final words, I hung up the phone, resolute in my decision to no longer involve myself with Skylar. However, Skylar didn't cease her efforts to target me. She began to denounce me on social media, posting daily claims that my divorce is all because of my sister, directly blaming me for the collapse of her marriage. Her posts escalated each day, turning into attacks not just on me, but also on our family and friends. One afternoon at work, the door to the store swung open with a sudden force, and Skylar stormed in. The moment she saw me, her expression twisted with fury, and she raised her voice so loudly that it startled everyone around us. You've ruined my life! She screamed, her words cutting through the air like a knife. My coworkers froze, eyes wide in shock as she stormed toward me, completely ignoring the stunned customers who were witnessing the outburst. With every step she got closer, her finger pointed directly at me. You caused my divorce by telling Wesley! Her voice reverberated throughout the store, loud and accusatory. I felt the heat of embarrassment creep up my neck, but I forced myself to maintain composure. Skylar, please stop this here, I pleaded, my voice trembling slightly, but her rage was uncontrollable. She continued to berate me in front of everyone, oblivious to the discomfort she was causing. My heart raced, and with no other option left, I dialed security to handle the escalating situation. It wasn't just at work. One afternoon, Skylar barged into my home, shoving me aside as if I were nothing. Without warning, she began to violently smash items around the living room. The sound of glass shattering echoed in my ears as I scrambled to grab my phone and record her behavior. The image of her destruction was hard to comprehend. How had my sister, once someone I loved, become so completely unrecognizable. Skylar's harassment didn't stop there. She began filling my mailbox with threatening letters, each one more venomous than the last. Every morning I was greeted by horrific graffiti scrawled across my door, words like traitor and worst sister smeared in paint. The intensity of the hate grew worse with each letter. Phrases like, "You've caused me to lose everything," and "I will never forgive you," were etched into my mind, like poison slowly seeping into my soul. At first I tried to dismiss it. "It's just Skylar," I would tell myself. But when neighbors began to ask, "Have you seen the woman causing a scene outside your house?" Or, "Are you okay?" I could no longer ignore the toll it was taking on my mental health. I never imagined her obsession would spiral so far out of control. Reaching my breaking point, I turned to Jasper for advice. Together, we decided to take legal action. We spoke with a lawyer, and after gathering enough evidence of Skylar's violent harassment and stalking, we filed a lawsuit. The photos, video recordings, and letters we had collected painted a clear picture of the torment I had been enduring. Months later, the court issued its verdict. Skylar received a suspended sentence of 1 year, with mandatory counseling. A restraining order was also issued to prevent her from approaching me, granting me the legal protection I so desperately needed. When the news came, a weight lifted from my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe again. But Skylar wasn't done. She filed a civil lawsuit against me, claiming I had caused her harm. The audacity of her demands took me by surprise, but with Jasper's steady support, I remained focused on finding a resolution. We spoke with our lawyer again, proposing a settlement to avoid dragging out the court battle any longer. Eventually, after much persuasion from our parents, Skylar reluctantly agreed to settle. They argued, "Making a bigger issue out of this serves no purpose. It's better for you to step back now." She agreed, but her bitterness was unmistakable. As she walked away, she muttered through clenched teeth, "It's all her fault." With the legal battles behind me, I finally began to rebuild. The scars from the past remained, but I no longer lived in constant fear. I had Jasper by my side, steady, loving, and patient. His presence soothed the remnants of pain, and together we began to forge a new path. We moved to a new city, far away from the chaos, and started fresh. Every morning we sat together, sipping coffee and planning our day. These simple, everyday moments became my greatest source of joy and contentment. From now on, let's walk forward together, Jasper would say softly, holding my hand. The warmth of his touch melted away the last of the coldness that had lingered in my heart. With him, I knew I was no longer alone, and that gave me the strength to face whatever came next. The shadows of the past might never completely vanish, but with Jasper by my side, I was ready to step into the future. I took a deep breath and faced forward. This was not just an end, it was the beginning of something new. A fresh chapter in my life, one I was finally ready to embrace. Willow's story brings up a tough question. What does it really mean to be family? For years, she's been treated as secondary to Skylar, always overshadowed by her sister's needs and accomplishments. This exclusion from the family dynamic leaves her struggling with her self-worth, as her love and validation have always been conditional. The moment she's excluded from Skylar's wedding, it becomes clear that family ties can sometimes be more about societal expectations than genuine love. Willow's attempts to seek recognition from her family were met with indifference and rejection. Yet when she finally started living life on her own terms, moving in with Jasper and distancing herself from the toxic environment, she found her sense of self. Willow's journey is a reminder that our worth shouldn't depend on the approval of those who don't truly see us. We must question how much we're willing to sacrifice for the sake of family acceptance. Despite the deep wounds caused by Skylar's exclusion, there's a small spark of hope when Skylar admits her jealousy and regret. This raises the question, can family bonds truly be rebuilt after years of neglect and betrayal? Willow's choice to maintain distance reflects the strength required to break free from toxic cycles, but can forgiveness create space for healing? Would you have tried harder to mend the relationship with your family, or would you have chosen to walk away as Willow did? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's discuss how we can navigate complex family dynamics. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your opinions.